finally, I realized one day I was truly happy, very, very truly happy. And I said, wow, if I hadn't survived this and made it to the other side, I wouldn't have gotten to experience what that truly is like.
Success on your own terms. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me with my new friend, Judy Kim Cage. And she is a really cool person. And we have so much fun talking that we had to finally say, okay, let's record the show. Judy has attained some success in areas of life that are a little bit different for gifted and neurodivergent people. It's not your common everyday thing. Judy is a stroke survivor and has beat many odds. And in addition to that, she has defined success in her own life in lots of different ways. So as a multi-potentialite and educated person, she has had to deal with challenges that most of us probably will never have to deal with. So what we're going to talk about today is how to define success on your own terms. As we all know, gifted and neurodivergent people, we define success differently than the norm often. So Judy is going to speak to that today and whatever else we come up with. So Judy, welcome to Someone Gets Me. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy day to be here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. And I have lots of things on my mind that I want to talk about. And the first thing I would like to talk about or ask you about is through all the things you've been through, which we'll get into the story in a minute, what would you say your current definition of success is? Like you're successful in a lot of ways. So how would you define success in your own terms?
I used to define success, I think, in the traditional way, gainfully employed, making a nice paycheck, and, happily married, having great friends is always the case. But now I think it is being able to feel as though I'm living my fullest and happiest, whatever that encompasses. And I know that means so many things. That could mean things from minute to minute experiences. Mm-hmm. But as long as I am living authentically and with joy, oh my gosh, that's all I need.
Oh, that's really good. You're reminding me of when I learned a long time ago a definition of success. That is, success is when I learn something. And even if I've learned that I haven't learned anything, I'm still learning something. So no matter what, I'm successful. But I think I want to put joy in that spot instead of learning, yes. From what you just said, I think I want to add that because I think that's so important.
Well, some things that you learn are not joyful.
Right. Oh, totally. Yes. So give all of us a little bit of understanding of who you are, like where you were raised, what kind of, what the flavor of Judy Kim Cage's life. And then we'll get into what the things that have happened that have you really turn your story into a different kind of success.
Sure. Let's see. I am 46 years old. I am a first generation Korean American. My parents came over 50 years ago. I have two older sisters. And I basically grew up feeling as though I wanted to be a success. I wanted to, I went to a blue ribbon high school back then. Mm-hmm. A prestigious college, liberal arts, etc. And I worked very hard in accounting and finance. And I started my career as a Big Four auditor at Deloitte, normally filled with CPAs, mm-hmm. of which I was not one. But I also hated accounting. And basically I just wanted to continue growing and being successful. I was in high school. I was a future business leader of America. I was a nerd. And I loved it. But just happily going through the process, really just kind of forging a path because, my mom was a nurse. My dad was a small business owner. And they were forging their own path. They didn't have any guidance in terms of, how to be successful, how to deal with the government, how to deal with legal issues, et cetera. So between my sisters and I, we were just kind of winging it. And I think, after time, I had finally built up my career to a point where everything that I had done in the past kind of was brought together into this new position. And I had, what I thought been, had everything I wanted. And that is when, my body told me to slow down.
And so it's interesting that you get to this place in your life where it's like, I've attained the American dream. I've attained the success, whatever you thought it was going to be at that time. Mm-hmm. And then your system, your body and your system said, oh, no, I don't think so. Yeah. That's not it.
Plot twist.
That, right. It was a huge plot twist. It was like, and so I think that that's so important because I think that happens for a lot of people, especially gifted and neurodivergent people, is we start striving after the thing that we're taught and trained and ingrained to go after, but it's not friendly to our nervous system.
It's definitely not.
And then our nervous system fights back in various ways. So share a little bit about how your nervous system fought back against you. It's like you were trying to fit into something that wasn't for you, but you didn't know it wasn't for you because you were just doing what you were taught.
So the bottom line, the biggest thing that happened to me is that I had a massive hemorrhagic stroke. So I had a big brain bleed. Now that caused a number of things, but the brain bleed was a result of a brain disease, I call it, called moyamoya, which is very rare. It's when I was diagnosed, it had 3.5 people in 1 million had the diagnosis. Now, and I like to multiply it out because I'm thinking 1 million is still kind of a small number, or 3.5 is a small number. So let's say 35 people in 10 million. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it seem, that much more tangible. So this brain disease, moyamoya, your internal carotid arteries, they keep shrinking for some reason, still unknown. And because of that, your brain doesn't receive enough blood. And when your brain doesn't receive enough blood, the brain says, hi, we're going to change that. We're going to make our own little adjustment. And we are going to form these collateral vessels. And when you do, these collateral vessels have very thin walls. So if you have that and high blood pressure, then chances are you're going to have a hemorrhage. They're usually discovered in children. So if they can do the surgery prior to them getting too old, the collateral vessels won't form as much and they can pretty much lead a normal life. I, however, was having TIAs or mini strokes since the age of 4. And they didn't diagnose me until the age of 29. And then I had 2 brain surgeries at the age of 29. Thought, hey, I'm pretty much cured. And then it was 10 years and 1 month after that. And then because I said, I'm cured, I'm going to go work. I'm going to go travel every other week. I'm going to be busy, busy, busy. And I just said, well, hey, I've done all I can do, and I wasn't nearly as cautious as I could have been. I wasn't as rigorous with taking my blood pressure. And so I felt like before the stroke, there were two different portions of life. There was before the surgeries, so childhood of not knowing anything, but having massive headaches, throwing up and, missing school. And then there was high school, mostly okay, college, mostly okay. And then the job, age of 25, headaches started up again. Age of 29, had a massive headache with stroke-like symptoms. And then I got the diagnosis. They said, here you go. This is what you've been missing your entire life. We're going to do a surgery that takes sutures that are 1/8 the thickness of human hair and stitch your brain with it. And so I said, wow, I made it through that, trying to discover a purpose in that one segment of life, or after that, was what I thought pretty huge. And then, so I said, there's no way a stroke is ever going to happen to me now, because I've cured it. It's fine. And then I had the stroke. And just in a quick summary of post-stroke, the stroke was actually the catalyst for me discovering that I also have a chronic illness called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. And it was the stroke that really kicked off these other symptoms, which I never knew I had. And I always just thought that was how things were. So without going too much into the EDS, which can create, dizziness, blood pooling, POTS, severe allergic reactions, etc. It was really the stroke that said, oh, hi, I'm going to introduce you to the rest of your body.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of gifted neurodivergent people have EDS. It's common, more common, I think, across, the population, which is kind of interesting, I think. And
it's great to know.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people I work with have some variation. And I was just reading some research about that recently. And I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And then I read research. I'm like, oh, now I think of it a little differently. So you were how old when you had the stroke?
I was 39 when I had the stroke. So by definition, that's a very young stroke survivor, because they call actually young stroke survivors anyone under the age of 65, which to me doesn't feel young. But I'm saying that as a very immature 46-year-old. But I had it at 39, and it was quite an experience. I lost my left side. The left side of my body was paralyzed. My arm fell out of my shoulder socket. It was actually hanging down very loosely. And I had dropped foot, so I couldn't walk. I had double vision because my basically the bleed fried my optic nerve on the right side, so then my left side was out. It doubled in vision. But at the same time, the left side, my acknowledgement that my left side even existed went out the window. And so all of that combined put me in a very odd twilight zone where I was basically just thrown into an entirely different reality. I couldn't walk. I could not talk super well. My memory kind of shot. Executive function was pretty messed up. And I was also, I lost control of my bodily functions. So the signals from my brain to my bladder, they were off timing. So even if I was able to walk, who knows, maybe a scientist one day will figure it out, but I was wetting the bed. At almost 40, to have all sorts of your reality shifted.
Right.
But I went through rigorous physical, occupational, and speech therapy, and a lot of spontaneous recovery, which then led me to recovering. I mean, I was walking out of there in 3 months. I decided I was so insistent on coming back to work. I said, I want my life back so much. And I was so stubborn. I said, there's no way I am not going back to work. There's no way I'm not going back to this life that I had worked so hard for. And so, I took on more therapy and I said, okay, well, I did a round of outpatient therapy. And then in June, I decided to go back to work. Of that year, it was January of 2019. And in June, I went back to work and I hopped on an airplane and I went back to Columbus, Ohio. And I said, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. And because that was my definition of success, that was my identity at that point, was everything I had built up to that point. I said, I am finally good.
Right. So work and all that you can accomplish was your identity.
Yes.
And then you spent those 6 months post-stroke working really hard to gain that identity back.
Absolutely.
So when did you start realizing that your definition of success as a gifted person, as somebody who's just been through this major situation, when did you start realizing that was shifting? Or was it one of those epiphany aha moments, or maybe a combination?
It was mostly a combination, really. But, I think it was the chunk of time that it took gaining the time back, being able to go from saying, oh my gosh, I'm only allowed to work 4 hours a week. But when I work 4 hours a week, it's so much harder than I ever thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started coming back, and seeing people more often, and also sitting in an office more often, with the fluorescent lights coming down and feeling all the sensory inputs that I never had to pay that much attention to, now they're flooding me. And the people's expectations, because I look so normal, speak so normally, walk pretty normally. Nobody can see that I have changes in my gait. People don't know the different adaptations that I have to make. They just expected that I was exactly the same as I was before I left.
Mm.
And that person before I left was smart, sharp, not to pat myself on the back, but it was.
Well, you were, right.
And so I made the decision of not telling anyone who didn't need to know that I had had this stroke, that I had almost died, because I didn't want them to judge me for something that I, in a job that's so competitive, that's, that doesn't really like seeing errors, is that, pretty much you're expected to not make them.
Right.
So I said I didn't want this held against me. And so I decided not to tell even, my colleagues that are in, that were in my group or right next to my group. And so I just said, I'm going to, just kind of soldier through it. And when I did that, and when I realized the differences and our ableist society, knowing that people just, people think you're exactly what you get. This is what you see. This is what you get. And I saw so many opportunities where that isn't the case.
Right.
When I'm walking along and I'm tired and my foot starts to drag and someone says to me, what's wrong with your shoe? Why is your shoe coming off? And I'm thinking, I had a stroke.
Right.
It's not, there's nothing wrong with my shoe. It's not that it's not tight on tight enough.
Except my body's tired, and right now it's having a hard time with my foot in walking.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So there's this level of patience and, just understanding that, I mean, my mom is a nurse, so I had learned to be compassionate, and kind of caring from a young age, but to even consider what other people were going through, it is even tougher for me too, I had our peer coordinator, at the hospital. She was in a wheelchair due to a car accident many years ago, about 20 years ago. And I was telling her about how amazing it was that I could actually do these things now. I could put in my earrings. I could tie my shoes. I could stand up in the shower.
Right.
And I completely stuck my foot in my mouth because she couldn't stand up in the shower. She couldn't stand up. And meanwhile, I was talking on the phone with her at the time. I was definitely not thinking. But at the same time, she goes, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Sonia, I'm sorry."
Right. Yeah.
Again, it's difficult for so many people when you haven't been through it to not understand. But then how do you get people to understand without them going through it, nor would you ever wish this sort of thing upon anyone else. Right. But so you wish you could give them the knowledge.
So that's when we help with like awareness and empathy and compassion. And you can't really totally get there, but you can have a little bit of an understanding.
Absolutely.
So do you notice a shift in yourself from your awareness and maybe compassion for people with what could be considered like invisible challenges, invisible things happening, that we can't really see from before the stroke till now? Do you see that you respond to people differently?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could be getting out of an elevator and somebody could be on crutches, even not even in a chair. And I just think, like I'm in no rush, please just go, or just trying to accommodate, in the little ways, thinking, gosh, it kind of gives me a little selfish flashback thinking I was in a chair. I, was given a cane. I am lucky, very lucky that I do not have to use either of them. But, I try to make other people's lives easier when I say it.
Yes. So part of your process, from what I read your manuscript, and you guys, Judy has a book that I think's already out on Kindle that's getting ready to come out, and in a paper book. And I started reading the manuscript, and it's absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I really loved about it was when you were talking about like the whole resistance piece and how there's all these things, and then how you had to keep persisting in order to go back to work in 6 months. But even just past that, that I kind of call it that tenacious spirit. Like, okay, I'm just going to keep going at it. Watch me, watch me be successful, even when people may not get it. So what do you think it is about you, the woman, that is like, can be so persistent that even when resistance was showing up and stuff was happening, that you kept driving toward this goal, that you've shifted what your definition of the goal is anyway. But what is it about you, the qualities about you that have really fed that persistence?
Well, for one, I am ridiculously stubborn. The more I interact with my parents as I grow, I definitely see where I got that from. Love you, mom and dad. I was just, it was inconceivable to me that I just not go back. It was just something I clung to so hard. And that is what they call, kind of the definition of a super survivor is someone who, beats these medical odds, who also has gone through, a serious, disabling event, and comes back from it, who maintains a positive attitude and who just will not accept something that either they won't accept that they can't go back to their job or that they can't take care of their family like they were expected to take care of them.
Right. And so I think your positive attitude and all the energy that's behind having a positive attitude. Yeah. I think that was probably a lot of that fire within that kept you going, because you, from the very first conversation I've had with you, I feel that. I can feel that positive, kind of uplifting, like I'm going after it, whatever the cool thing is, but in a lighthearted kind of, but yet serious way. It's a very interesting feeling. And so I can see you persisting when other people probably would look at you and go, what is she doing? And you're like, well, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm going back to work. Like, I don't know why you're even asking me that ridiculous question. I could see the look on your face now. Like, that's like a dumb question. Of course I'm going back. Watch me, Oh, you say I can't. Oh, okay. Let me show you.
Well, then.
Let me show you how you're wrong on all these different levels very quickly. You did that, right?
I did. Yeah. I did. And
I knew it. I knew you did.
when it comes to the positive attitude and just laughing through it, it was almost like, it was a coping mechanism in itself. Sure. How do you make it through without creating some sort of lightness? Because otherwise, the heaviness of it all would it could drown you.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it was funny to say, hey, my left hand wasn't working. And then I say, hey, evil twin. I call this my evil twin. Like, yeah, evil twin, high five. Right. And I would say, yeah, you got your skills back. This is so great. And, just saying, like, isn't it funny? I'm in this rehabilitation center and I'm in here as a young woman with, very, like a lot of older people who can't walk, can't move, can't eat, can't, and that in itself was pretty heavy. And I wasn't making fun of them. By all means, I was not doing that.
No.
But just to say that, I could make fun of myself and I could say, oh my gosh, this boot that you're giving me to help with my drop foot is like the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Okay. We get something else.
Does not go with my fashion statement. So we need to fix that problem, right?
Or I'm like, yay, I'm potty trained now.
All right.
It's so amazing. And getting to laugh at that, I think definitely made things later.
Oh, that's cool. So when did you realize that your definition of success had changed, that you'd rewired yourself into a new version? I call it kind of like an up leveling, like, because you're still successful in all the other ways that you were striving for before, but now there's like the joy and happiness comes first and the other things are secondary, yes, if you will. So when did you realize that shift happened?
Oh my gosh, Diane, when I used to say I resented all the lessons that I had to learn. I resented that I had to learn what everybody else had to learn because, gosh, didn't I get a pass of some sort? Because didn't I make it through this and learn a whole separate set of lessons just by going through this? And I realized that my perspective completely changed when I kept doing the work, and I kept, doing the therapy or finding different things like both, like mental and, different physical therapies. And I realized one day I was truly happy, very, very truly happy. And I said, wow, if I hadn't survived this and made it to the other side, I wouldn't have gotten to experience what that truly is like.
Right.
I wouldn't have had the chance.
Right.
And once I got to that level and I had started seeing beauty in everything, before this point. But once I did, my gosh, that was the light switch that went off. And I said, oh my gosh, like I can see joy in everything. I can see gratitude in everything. Even, when it's a little bit tough. But yeah, it's, the air in your lungs, like they say.
Right. Yeah. That is wonderful. It's, to me, it was like you got to experience the falling off of the heaviness. And then that joy is what was there. And it was just so pure that you couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
And how beautiful is that? This is my dog, Allie, by the way. She came in to see you because she only comes in here when there's a really nice voice or nice energy. So she's here with us.
Nice,
I hope
sweetie.
You don't mind. She's my little baby. Yeah.
Not at all. Mine is actually right back there behind the screen.
Yes.
He's demanding mom's attention.
Of course, because that's what they want. They want to be part of. Well, I think that's really amazing because, it's like I always say that we know when we're in the right direction, if you will, when there's a conspicuous absence of whatever was binding or holding us back. And you just described that really beautifully. And I think that's really, really fun. So what inspired you to write this book? And what do you hope to do with the book? Like what impact would you like to see the book have out here in the world? I mean, your story is very compelling. I love talking to you and listening to like how you've lived through everything. But what do you hope to see happen?
Well, the full inspiration for it was that in terms of survival studies for hemorrhagic strokes, there really are not many out there. There was one it's probably still like 20 years old, that says you have a 26.7% chance of living or surviving after 5 years. Now, survival rate studies are their own thing, right? A 5-year mark is somewhat arbitrary because that's when they can kind of cut off study subjects are still going to respond to you after 5 years, et cetera. But I was living through, I was writing a blog for my own edification, just to work through feelings. I didn't really have, anybody else I could talk to who understood, except for my therapists. And I had started doing peer mentoring, and I was getting stories from these other patients or getting stories from people who were experiencing their very first cognitive issues, whether they were saying, oh, it's due to age, or, oh, what's going on? Why am I starting to have like tinnitus or, just a crappy memory? And they're saying, we have some white matter on our MRI. What do we do? Who do we go see? Do you, Judy, since you have been through this massive stroke, do you have all the answers to the universe? Can you tell us the shortcut that we can get to make a neurologist wait less than 6 months to get into? I'm like, I don't. Right. And the answers I give you are not going to be the answers that you want. But, I made it past the 5-year mark. I said, wow, okay, so I did it. I made it. And I'm encountering all of these people who have these questions and had similar questions or thoughts or despair even, or maybe not despair, maybe toxic positivity that they received. Right. And I just wanted to give them a dose of reality without them having to, find somebody who had it. They could, find my book, hopefully, and then read about that experience and hear about it in such an honest way that they know that, gosh, the worst could happen, or pretty bad. I won't say the worst. Right. Now I say the stroke is probably one of the best things that's happened to me. But yeah, I just wanted to give people, I guess, fodder for understanding that, you can get through the hard things, or you can see things in a different light.
Right. It's like you can get through the hard things. And like you said, you can look at it at now and say it was this really great thing that happened, though you didn't think that when it was going on necessarily.
Definitely.
And how our perspective changes when we're open and positive and we look for where the value is, or the good, capital G good, like spiritual kind of good, is in situations. And I think that's really powerful. So you wrote this book, and is the people that you would like to have read the book, or that you're thinking of when you were writing it, are people who are actually surviving similar things and their loved ones, right?
Yes, they're caretakers and the survivors. Yep.
I think that's really important, because I think being the caretaker or the family member is harder than being the patient. And, I've worked a lot and have for most of my career with substance abuse and all different kinds of medical things with people. And the person that we're treating, I used to say all the time when I was running treatment centers, the person with the medical record has issues and has things to work on, whatever they would be. But the family members have a harder job, because they are dependent on the person who's got the medical record to do or not do, or whatever's going to happen over here. And so they have a level of powerlessness over the greater situation, which for me, that's the harder role often, because you can't control, but you want to be there. And there's all these feelings about it. So I think your book is a really nice bridge for some of the people who are feeling that kind of, I don't know, I'm powerless. I shouldn't be powerless, but what do I do? And all of those things from someone who was the person in the position, not just some random person who goes, well, I'm a mental health counselor. Let me tell you what to do. I can tell you what to do because I lived it. And I think that there's great value in that. So I'm really, really grateful that you wrote this book for people so that they can start to understand and then possibly digest some things that are very valuable for their life and their loved one's life, or anybody you might run into,
There's actually a nice bit of perspective from my husband as well, who was my primary caretaker. And we've had this conversation over years, for starting 6 months after the stroke, when I finally asked him what things were really like, because I didn't completely remember. And I said, wow, I was really mean to you sometimes, wasn't I? Or, I said, I was kind of like, oh, shush, and I was all nice to the nurses, though. He said, yeah, but, like, who do you, quote unquote, unmask with, or who are you real with? That's the people who love you and who care about you and who will still be there as your safety net. But, you just present nicely to the people who take care of you physically.
Well, because on some level, you knew those people who were taking care of you physically, you were dependent on in a lot of ways. And so no matter how sick we are or how out of it we are, we can often discern that, Yes. That's really amazing. So is there anything that you wanted to talk about today? I'm watching the time a little bit because I want to be respectful of your time, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that I haven't mentioned? Now, everybody, you can find Judy's bio, how to hunt her on social media, which I love it when you guys do that, and also how to get her book. And so you may want to get it for yourself or somebody else that because I think it's really powerful. Her story is amazing. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and I really am enjoying reading it. And I find a great power in it. And I'm really grateful that you wrote this book and you're bringing it to the world. I think it's a great gift. But is there anything that you wanted to mention or talk about that I haven't asked you about, or something on your mind now before I have 2 final closing questions before?
Just say one of the simplest messages is just that if you could try to live your life with joy and with a different perspective without having to go through this, there are ways to do that. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of changes in perspective, but I do think it is possible. And I would be so thrilled for anyone who could do that.
Oh, I love that. It's like, let's quit ignoring all the signs. Let's quit staying on this railroad. I'm getting goosebumps. This railroad to a destination that that we were almost brainwashed and indoctrinated into thinking is it, and that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be debilitated or go through a major incident in order to get it. You could make some different choices along the way. That doesn't mean you don't have life obstacles and challenges, because we all do.
Of course.
But you don't have to bring yourself to the brink of death. Yeah, that's a really powerful message. I love it. So I have two questions that I always love to ask people, especially people who have lots of experience in the world like you do, because they're just fun. So the first question is, what's the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Oh, you mean ever?
Yeah, ever.
Okay. Ever. I was on a business trip to Japan, and we were at this sushi restaurant it was almost like secret. It was like in a basement. And there was this big sumo guy with knives that were so sharp that if you just touched the fish, they would split open. And he said, there were, various things that we were given, but he says, what will you not eat? And I said, well, I don't think I would enjoy snake. And he said, okay, then. But he made it seem as though that was actually somewhere on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that skin, that looks kind of suspect. It looks a little shiny on what's going on here. And so anyway, I would like to think that I was not given snake. But I guess it's probably the most interesting thing at the time that I had eaten was probably sea urchin, which is a lot more common now. But it was basically like a bowl of lard
mm-hmm.
at the time. And that was probably the most amazing meal. Of an interesting meal of my life. But yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that. I love that. And so the final question of the show is, if we were going to put a billboard up for the entire world to see with Judy Kim Cage's quote on it, your quote, your name on the billboard for everyone to see, what would that quote be?
Get unstuck.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. That is genius. I love it. I love it. Well, everyone, I hope you have loved this episode as I have loved talking to Judy. She's amazing, as you can hear and see if you're watching us on YouTube. But definitely follow her on social media, get the book, and understand that there's great value in all of these things. And I'm so grateful, Judy, that you came here to meet with me today on Someone Gets Me and inspire people all over the world. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Diane.
So remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. And as Judy says, get unstuck. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Diane and Judy saying, be well.